Now back to the show. This is AM 650's The Law Show.
Welcome back to the program. Scott Stanley and Diana Robertson are personal injury lawyers with Murphy Battista, LLP, here in Vancouver. We've been talking about rehabilitation and personal injuries and some of the cases that our guests have encountered over the years and some of the government policies that relate to this field. But there is a particular case that you actually have both collaborated on, Diana as an occupational therapist in the beginning, involving a brain injury. And when we're talking about driver rehab and some of these other programs, Diana, that you've described to us, most of these, at least from where I'm sitting, appear to be cases in which physical injury has occurred and there's been limited ability to drive, and yet the individual has found a way with technology, and back you go. Brain injuries are a whole different category. So tell us about this case. Scott, why don't you start with the story, because it's a fascinating case, and it tells us a lot about what you personal injury lawyers do.
Well, we had the pleasure of representing this emergency room physician, and just an absolute outlier in life, a Renaissance man, excelled at everything he did, and was involved in an accident and sustained a concussion. It was just one of these unfortunate few. About 10% of people that sustain concussions do not make a full recovery. And this gentleman had diffuse disabling symptoms from his concussion. He couldn't work again. He was also a developer of real estate. Again, a real Renaissance man. And we had his case for about 6 or 7 years before we went to trial, and we got reasons earlier this year, and he was awarded just under $6 million. So it was the biggest judgment in BC history, taking into account liability considerations. So,
okay.
And I was Diana's principal when she was articling, and you normally try to teach, but I probably learned as much from Diana as I taught her. And I had Diana involved in the case just to look at a segment of it. It was a piece of surveillance video, and it really illustrates how you can always, you think I've done this for 20 years, you think you know something, you look at it through another lens, and you get a completely different perspective. And I'll turn that over to Diana.
So what's the story about the surveillance video?
I just want to say I did just a small amount on this case, and I think it was really Scott and the team that should take most of the credit. But what happened was the defense lawyers were bringing forth a couple videos, surveillance videos, and that's often something that's done when a person has been injured, and they're going to show these in court. And certainly for myself as a therapist, when I've done expert witness testimony, I've been shown video and asked, well, look at this. Doesn't this mean the person can go back to work?
Sure.
Doesn't this mean that they're functioning well?
Right.
And so as a clinician, as an expert witness, I've encountered these kind of videos before, and have a different perspective than maybe a lawyer would have on those. So Scott had asked me to just review these couple videos that were being put forth by defense counsel. The first video, they were stating that the doctor could do this intensive yard work, and they were alleging, based on this, I think it was a 1.5 hour video, that he was able to do digging of trees and replaced a whole hedge and all this stuff that he could do, and this was their evidence that he actually didn't have difficulties with sustaining and maintaining activity, that fatigue wasn't an issue. So I started looking at this video and thought, well, the judge isn't going to sit there for 2 hours and watch this video.
Of course.
It's going to be showed in little segments, and I think that's the way that defense was planning on doing it. They were going to just show some highlights of the video of this fellow digging to put in a cedar hedge. So then I looked at it, and I started looking at it as, again, from the lens of as a therapist, and thought, no, this video does not show sustained activity. What it shows is exactly what we're alleging, and that is that he can't sustain and that he's got fatigue issues. So I asked Scott if it was okay if I took the video home. I worked on it, I think, for like 3 or 4 days, and broke down that video into 30-second segments, and then charted those segments, and I categorized them in 3 ways. One was when he was actually doing physical activity, when he was actually digging, doing something. The other was when he was just standing there resting. The other was where he was walking, because there was a kind of three things he was doing. He'd be walking with the wheelbarrow,
Right,
fairly
sure.
low-level activity.
Right.
And so then I took that whole period of time and I color-coded each 30-second section as to what the activity was during that period, and then charted that out on a graph and showed that in terms of the overall time that they videoed him, that actually a very small amount was actually spent doing the digging, the physical yard work, and of that time, over time, the proportion and length of the rest periods got longer and longer, such to the end of the video, I think there was very little actual work going on and a lot of standing,
So
a lot of resting.
A little embarrassment on the part of the other side who had submitted this video as evidence of the competence of your client, and it turns out it turned out to be exactly the opposite. It supported your case.
Wait till you hear about the next video.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So they also had another video where they this fellow has some young children, and the family had brought on a nanny who would go with this fellow when he would take his young children out for outings, and because he has some cognitive issues and there's some judgment impairment issues, and I think looking at that video, the video was again from submitted by defense counsel, and it really, we were able to turn it around and use it to show what we were alleging, and that is that this person does have some difficulties with safety, and his wife had been saying, and she was testifying that, no, I'm concerned, I can't leave him alone with the children, he doesn't make good decisions.
Right.
And this is a person who had been, functioning at a really high level. It's the person who you're going to trust with your life in an emergency department. And his wife's saying, I don't want to trust him with my children.
Right.
And of course for him, he's not perceiving that he has any issues.
Of course. Yeah.
So looking at this video.
So once again, the video backfires.
Yeah. So the video is of him taking his children. I think it was at Bridal Falls or some place where there's a big platform where you stand and you look over the falls, and there's a huge drop. And I looked at the video and I said to Scott, the allegation was that he didn't have issues with fatigue again. I said, this video isn't about fatigue. This is about him taking his 3-year-old child and putting him up on his shoulders and letting his hands go from the shoulders and standing at the edge of a platform over a cliff.
Oh, boy.
That's what this video is about.
Right, right.
And it's about his children. One of them runs off towards the road and he doesn't even notice before the nanny intervenes and grabs the child. And that was really, I think, powerful for our case in showing, yes, this person does have impairments, and you're not going to see them when he's sitting in the courtroom.
So the award, Scott, of the $6 million, what was that for? For the care that he's going to require, the assistance just to get through the rest of his earthly days?
Well, most of that was just income loss because he was such a
high-powered guy.
High-powered,
sure.
Yeah, the vast majority of that was income loss.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Past income loss and future income loss. I think it was almost $4 million of income of income loss.
But it took 6 years to put it all together, right?
Yeah, that's typical for cases like that.
And who was the loser? Was it the insurance company of British Columbia? Or his insurer? Because somebody was being sued, right? Your client was suing somebody to gain these awards.
Well, we don't like to call them losers, Sterling, but that's a little unkind. But
for an adversarial lawyer who spends most of his time in court, you don't want to talk about people being losers?
There's no losers.
Come on. We've had you on this show before, Mr. Stanley.
Both parties had justice dispensed to them fairly.
All right, There you go. There's a very legal accommodation of the outcome. Thank you both for coming in. It's great to see you. Diana Robertson and Scott Stanley from Murphy Battista. Give them a call if you have personal injury issues in your life. They're online. You can find all the contact stuff at murphybattista.com. Thank you both for coming in. Good to see you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Red Robinson next with The Diner. See you next time.